Commander De-Jong stood in the massive council chamber, his hands clenched behind his back. The room stretched out before him like a cathedral, filled with thousands of alien delegates from across the galaxy. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing star maps and data streams. The air smelled strange, a mix of different atmospheres that the environmental systems tried to balance for all the different species present. He had been standing there for 6 hours. 6 hours of waiting while the council debated whether to help. New BUSAN. The distress signals still played on the main screen. De-Jong forced himself to watch. Fires consumed the colony's main city. The Vrelian swarm ships, looking like massive insects made of metal, tore through the orbital defense platforms. Explosions bloomed in silence across the display. 4 million people lived on New Bizan. 4 million humans who believed the Galactic Council would protect them. Ambassador Hana stepped forward to speak again. Her voice was steady, but De-Jong could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been pleading with the council for hours. "Honorable delegates," she said, her words translated instantly into thousands of languages. "The colony world of New Bizan is under attack. We formally request immediate military assistance under Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Treaty." A delegate from the Corvaxian Empire responded, its translator making its clicking sounds into flat words. "Ambassador, the proper procedure requires a committee review. We must verify the threat level and determine appropriate response protocols." "There are 4 million people dying right now," Hannah said, her voice rising. "We don't have time for committees." Another delegate, this one from a species that looked like floating jellyfish, added its thoughts. "The council must act with deliberation. Hasty military action sets dangerous precedents." De-Jong felt something break inside him. Precedents. They were talking about precedents while people burned. On the screen, a human broadcast cut through. A woman's face appeared, streaked with ash. "This is New Bizan Central. The swarm has breached the northern shield. We're evacuating civilians to the underground shelters." But the transmission dissolved into static. Then nothing. "Motion to table the discussion until the Security Committee can convene," said a tall, thin alien with too many joints in its arms. "Seconded," said another voice from somewhere in the chamber. The vote happened quickly. Thousands of delegates pressed buttons on their consoles. The result appeared on the main display. 6,847 in favor of tabling. 1,203 against. 4,392 abstentions. The motion passed. Hannah stood frozen. De-Jong watched her shoulders slump. Around them, delegates were already moving on to the next item on the agenda. Something about trade regulations. De-Jong left the chamber. He couldn't watch anymore. He found Hannah in a side corridor 20 minutes later. She sat on a bench, staring at her datapad. The screen showed casualty estimates from New Bizan. The numbers kept climbing. "They're not coming," she said quietly. "The committee won't convene for 3 days. By then everyone will be dead," De-Jong finished. They sat in silence. Other human diplomats walked past, their faces showing the same shock and grief. 127 years. That's how long humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. They had paid their fees, followed the rules, sent their young people to serve in Council peacekeeping forces. They had believed in the system. The final transmission from New Bizan came 8 hours later. The planet's automated systems sent it, cold and mechanical. Population centers destroyed. Estimated survivors, 0. New Bizan colony has fallen? De-Jong was in the human embassy when the news arrived. Around him, staffers stopped working. Some cried. Others just stared at screens in silence. 4,200,000 people. Gone. Dr. Tahoe found him that evening. The scientist looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. Tahoe ran humanity's quantum research division, and he had a reputation for working through the night. "I need to show you something," Tahoe said. "Something the council has been hiding from us." They went to a secure room deep in the embassy. Tahoe pulled up files on a screen, data that made De-Jong's head hurt just looking at it. For the past 30 years, we've been developing quantum tunnel drive technology, Tejo explained. It's revolutionary. Ships can cross distances in days that take Council ships months. We reported our progress to the Council as required by the treaties. And? Dae-Young asked. They told us to stop. Said it was too dangerous, too unstable. They've been blocking our research through regulations and technology embargoes. Tejo pulled up another file, but I kept working on it anyway. And I found something. The Council has been using similar technology for over 200 years. They've been lying to us. Dae-Young felt cold. Why would they do that? Control, Tejo said simply. If we have FTL drives that match theirs, we become equals. We can expand without needing their permission. We can defend ourselves without relying on their fleets. They've been keeping us weak on purpose. The scientists pulled up more files. Trade restrictions that only affected human colonies. Technology licenses that cost humans triple what other species paid. Defense pacts that required human military service but provided no actual protection. They've been using us, Tejo continued. Our resources, our soldiers, our trade. But they never intended to treat us as equals. We've been junior partners at best. Useful tools at worst. Dae-Young thought about New Bisan, about 4 million people who died because the Council wanted to follow procedures. About 127 years of humanity trying to play by rules that were designed to keep them in their place. Show this to Ambassador Hanna, he said. And to Earth. The emergency session of Earth's Parliament happened 3 days later. Every representative attended, either in person or by hologram. They reviewed the evidence from Tejo. They watched the recordings from New Bisan. They read the Council's response. A formal letter of condolence that mentioned regrettable circumstances and procedural requirements. The vote was unanimous. Hanna delivered the message to the Galactic Council herself. Dae-Young stood beside her as she read the statement to the assembled delegates. Effective immediately, humanity severs all ties with the Galactic Council. All treaties are voided. All agreements nullified. Council representatives have 72 hours to leave human space. Human citizens will withdraw from all Council territories within the same time frame. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in thousands of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. Hanna continued speaking, her voice cutting through the noise. For 127 years, we believed in this council. We believed in collective security and mutual cooperation. We paid our dues. We sent our children to fight in your wars. And when we needed you most, you let us die. She paused, looking around at the sea of alien faces. We will remember who stood with us, she said. And we will remember who watched us burn. Dae-Young added the final words, his voice hard as steel. Humanity will never forget New Bisan, never forget that 4 million people died while you debated procedures. We're done asking for your help. We're done following your rules. From this moment on, humanity stands alone. They walked out of the chamber together. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos. Ahead of them lay uncertainty. But Dae-Young felt something he hadn't felt in days. He felt free. 6 months after humanity left the Galactic Council, the galaxy noticed something strange. Human space had gone completely dark. Admiral Kyung watched the tactical display from her command center on Earth's moon. Thousands of points of light showed human ships, stations, and colonies. Every single one had disappeared from the Council's sensor networks. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Status report, she said calmly. Her second officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Bora, pulled up the data. All human assets withdrawn from Council space. Operation Fortress is complete. The quantum disruption fields are active on all border zones. Kyung nodded. The fields were her idea. They didn't make FTL travel impossible, but they made it extremely difficult. Any ship trying to enter human space without proper authorization codes would find their jump calculations going wrong. They might end up light years off course, or they might not complete the jump at all. The border was effectively sealed, and the Council's response? Confused, Bora replied with a slight smile. They've sent 3 diplomatic ships to our borders. All were turned back by automated systems. They never even got close enough to transmit messages. In the council chambers, thousands of light years away, the delegates were indeed confused. The human section sat empty. Human trade ships no longer docked at council stations. Human goods disappeared from markets overnight. Even human citizens who had married aliens and lived in council space had packed up and left. High Chancellor Mordaxus stared at reports that made no sense. How did they evacuate millions of people in 72 hours? His aide, a nervous creature with 6 eyes, shuffled its feet. We don't know, Excellence. Our analysts believe they used some kind of advanced FTL technology we weren't aware of. Impossible, Mordaxus said. But he didn't sound certain. The truth was simpler than the council suspected. Humanity had been planning this for months, ever since Dr. Tejo's quantum tunnel drives became operational. Ships had been positioned. Evacuation routes mapped. When the order came, humanity moved with military precision on the human side of the new border. Engineer Minji stood in the construction bay and looked up at her creation. The ship was massive, dwarfing anything humanity had built before. Its hull was dark, absorbing sensor scans rather than reflecting them. Weapon ports lined its sides, each one capable of firing projectiles at relativistic speeds. The first Retribution-class dreadnought, she said quietly. Complete? Her assistant, a man named June who had transferred from merchant fleet operations, whistled low. How many are we building? 50 in the first production run, Minji said. With more to follow, June looked at her in shock. 50? These things cost more than some colonies. New Bizen costs 4 million lives, Minji replied, her voice flat. We're making sure that never happens again. The council learned about the dreadnoughts 3 months into humanity's silence. A Korvaxian scout ship, curious about the quiet borders, managed to get close enough to scan a human patrol. The readings it sent back caused panic in the council's military offices. The ship they detected was 3 times larger than a council battleship. Its power output suggested weapons that could crack planets. And according to the scout sensors, it was just sitting there on patrol. If that was a patrol ship, what did human warships look like? The council decided to send a proper diplomatic envoy. They assembled a fleet of 12 ships, enough to look impressive but not threatening. They approached the human border with all communication channels open, broadcasting peaceful intentions. The automated defense platforms detected them at maximum sensor range. The response was immediate and impersonal. A computer-generated voice, not even a real person, delivered the message. You are approaching human space. Turn back immediately. No negotiations. No exceptions. The envoy's leader, a distinguished Korvaxian admiral named Vexul, tried to explain. We come in peace. The council wishes to discuss the recent misunderstandings. Turn back, the voice repeated. You have 10 seconds to alter course. We demand to speak with human authorities. Weapons locked onto all 12 ships simultaneously. The targeting was so fast and precise that every captain felt it through their sensors. 1 second, they were safe. The next, they were all dead if someone pressed a button. The envoy turned around, back at council headquarters. Mordaxus watched the report with growing concern. They won't even talk to us? No, Excellence, Vexul reported, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. They treat us like hostile forces. Their weapons technology is far beyond our estimates. What the council didn't know was that they were being watched. Human Intelligence Officer Hyon ran a network of agents and sensors that monitored everything happening in council space. She sat in a dark room filled with screens, processing information. The Vrelian swarm is moving again, she reported to Admiral Kyung. 3 frontier worlds under attack. All non-council species. Council response? Kyung asked. Committee meetings, Hyon said with disgust. They're debating proper procedures. Kyung smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Then I think it's time we remind the galaxy that humans don't wait for committees. On a planet called Varin 4, the population huddled in shelters as Vrelian swarm ships descended from orbit. The planet had asked the Council for help 3 times. Each time they received the same response. The matter was under review. The planet's defense coordinator, an alien named Plix, watched his screens in despair. The swarm would breach the shields within hours. After that, it would be a massacre just like New BUSAN. Then something appeared on the sensors. Ships dropping out of FTL right in the middle of the battle? Big ships. Plix's computer took a moment to identify them. Human ships. 3 dreadnoughts materialized like ghosts. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't ask for permission. They simply opened fire. The Vrelian swarm never knew what hit them. Railgun rounds traveling at a significant fraction of light speed tore through their ships. Missiles that used quantum guidance systems impossible to dodge or confuse. Energy weapons that made the swarm's shields look like paper. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, 37 Vrelian ships were destroyed. The 3 human dreadnoughts hadn't taken a single hit. They collected their spent munitions, scanned the planet to verify no more threats, and jumped away without saying a word. Plix stared at his screens in shock. Then he sent a message to his government. The Council couldn't protect them. But maybe humans could. He wasn't the only one thinking that way. All across the frontier, species that the Council ignored or exploited watched what happened at Varanfor. They saw ships that could cross the galaxy in days. They saw weapons that made Council fleets look outdated. They saw humans who actually did something instead of forming committees. Quietly, carefully, they began reaching out to human space. Merchant June became important during this time. Before the severance, he had run trade routes between human and alien worlds. He knew people. He knew routes. Most importantly, he knew how to move quietly. He established meeting points in neutral space, far from Council sensors. Small species would send representatives. June would meet them, listen to what they needed, and report back to Earth. 17 species made contact this month, he told Admiral Kyung during a briefing. They want protection agreements. Trade deals. Technology exchanges. What do they offer in return? Kyung asked. Intelligence about the Council, resources, some of them have strategic locations. June pulled up a star map. The Council's authority is crumbling. They're discovering they can't control everything anymore. Kyung studied the map. Red dots showed where species had made contact with humanity. There were hundreds of them, scattered across the frontier zones. The Council built an empire on the idea that everyone needed them, she said. Now they're learning that protection only works if you actually protect people. On Earth, Dr. Tejo continued his work. The quantum tunnel drives were just the beginning. His team developed better sensors, stronger shields, more efficient power systems. Every breakthrough was shared with the growing network of species that aligned with humanity. Not the best technology. Humans weren't stupid, but enough to let these species defend themselves. Enough to make them dangerous to anyone who tried to exploit them. The Council finally realized what was happening when 50 species jointly announced they were withdrawing from Council authority. They cited the same reason. The Council failed to protect them. Mordaxis. Read the list of departing species with growing horror. This is humanity's doing. They're building their own empire? But his aide corrected him. Actually, Excellence, our intelligence suggests otherwise. The humans aren't demanding anything from these species. No tribute, no military service, no trade monopolies. They're just, helping them. Why? Mordaxis asked. The aide had no answer. In human space, Ambassador Hannah prepared another broadcast. This one would bypass Council communication networks and reach species across the galaxy directly. We left the Council because it failed us, she said to the camera. But we didn't leave civilization behind. Humanity offers protection to any species that wants it. Fair trade to any species that asks. Technology sharing to any species that needs it. We don't demand tribute or service. We ask only that you treat your people fairly and deal honestly with us. The Vrelian swarm made a fatal mistake. They thought humanity's silence meant weakness. General Subin stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Thunder, watching the tactical display. 3 Vrelian hive clusters glowed red on the screen. Each one held billions of the insect-like creatures. Each one sent out ships to attack and consume other species. "All fleets report ready," her tactical officer said. Subin nodded. She was young for a general, only 38. But she had earned her rank in the border wars. Now she commanded humanity's rapid response legions. 15 fleets of the newest and fastest ships humanity could build. "Begin Operation Cleansing," she ordered. Across 3 different star systems, human fleets appeared simultaneously. The quantum tunnel drives let them coordinate attacks across hundreds of light years with perfect timing. The Vrelians had never faced anything like it. The first Hive cluster was in the Fate 9 system. 20 Vrelian battleships orbited the Hive world, protected by thousands of smaller craft. They detected the human ships and moved to attack. They never got the chance. The human dreadnoughts opened fire from extreme range. Railgun rounds crossed the distance in seconds, moving so fast the Vrelians couldn't track them. Ships exploded. Stations shattered. The Hive world's surface installations disappeared under waves of kinetic strikes within 30 minutes. The first cluster was destroyed. The second cluster fell even faster. The humans had learned from the first attack. This time they used different tactics, jumping in close and launching thousands of missiles at once. The Vrelian defenses couldn't handle the volume of fire. It was like trying to stop rain with your hands. The third cluster tried to run. Their ships activated FTL drives and scattered in all directions. But human ships were faster. They hunted down every vessel, one by one, across a dozen star systems. Not a single Vrelian ship escaped. 7 days after it began, Operation Cleansing ended. 3 Hive clusters erased. The Vrelian swarm's power broken. And humanity hadn't lost a single ship. The galaxy watched in shock. In the council chambers, High Chancellor Mordaxis stared at the reports. "How is this possible? The Vrelian swarm has been a threat for centuries. We fought 3 major wars against them." His military advisor, a grizzled veteran named Kelvar, shook his head slowly. "The humans fight differently, Excellence. They don't wait for the enemy to gather. They don't worry about proper engagement protocols. They identify a threat and they destroy it completely. No committee meetings. No debates. Just action." "They're acting like vigilantes," Mordaxis protested. "They're acting like soldiers," Kelvar corrected. "Something the Council forgot how to do a long time ago." More reports came in over the following weeks. Human ships appeared wherever threats emerged. Pirates attacking trade routes found themselves facing dreadnoughts. Warlords threatening frontier colonies woke up to find human marines on their doorsteps. Slavers discovered their compounds destroyed and their prisoners freed. The humans never asked permission. They never filed operational reports. They saw a problem, they fixed it, and they left. Intelligence Officer Hyon sat in her monitoring center, coordinating the information network. Her screens showed contacts with dozens of species across the galaxy. The numbers were growing. "Status update," she said to her team. 217 species have made formal contact, her deputy reported. 143 have signed protection agreements. 98 want trade deals. 67 are asking for technology exchanges. And the Council's response? Threatening sanctions. Promising military action. "The usual," her deputy smirked. Nobody's listening anymore. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. The Council had maintained control through a simple system. They were the only ones who could provide protection and advanced technology. But they gave that protection slowly and grudgingly, always at high cost. And they kept the best technology for themselves. Humanity broke that monopoly. They protected people without asking for payment. They shared technology without demanding control. Species that had spent centuries under the Council's thumb suddenly saw another option. It terrified Mordaxis. He decided to make a personal appeal. Against the advice of his council, he traveled to the human border himself. He brought no fleet, no guards, just a small diplomatic shuttle. He broadcast his intentions openly. Asking for a meeting with human leadership, Admiral Kyung agreed to meet him at a neutral station on the border. The station was small and old, a leftover from humanity's early expansion. It had basic life support and not much else. Kyung arrived with Commander Dae-young and 2 guards. Mordaxis came alone. They met in a plain conference room. No decorations, no ceremony, just a table and chairs. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Mordaxis began. He looked tired, older than his years. "I want to discuss restoring relations between humanity and the Council." "No," Kyung said flatly. Mordaxis blinked. "You haven't even heard my proposal." "We don't need to," Dae-young said. His voice was hard, carrying the weight of New Busan. "You're here because your authority is collapsing. Because species are leaving the Council. Because you're losing control? The galaxy needs order," Mordaxis argued. "Without the Council there will be chaos, war, suffering." "There already is suffering," Kyung replied. "The Council just ignores it unless it's politically convenient to care." She pulled up a holographic display. Mordaxis flinched as images appeared. New Busan burning. 4 million people dying. Then more images. Other attacks, other disasters, all places where the Council had failed to act. "We spent 127 years trusting you," Kyung said. "We followed your rules, paid your fees, died in your wars. And when we needed you, you held committee meetings while our people burned." "That was a terrible mistake," Mordaxis admitted. "I've come to apologize for—" "We don't want apologies," Dae-young interrupted. "Apologies don't bring back the dead." Mordaxis tried a different approach. "Then what do you want? Territory? Resources? A seat on the High Council?" Kyung laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "You still don't understand. We don't want anything from the Council. We want the Council to stop existing." "That's madness." "The Council has maintained peace for thousands of years." "The Council has maintained its own power for thousands of years," Kyung corrected. "There's a difference. Real peace means protecting people, not protecting your authority." She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "We're done talking. The Council can continue to exist if it wants, but it won't control human space, and it won't control the species we protect. If that's acceptable to you, stay out of our way. If not—" She let the threat hang unspoken. Mordaxis rose slowly. "You're making a mistake. Power corrupts, Admiral. One day you'll become what you hate about us." "Maybe," Kyung admitted. "But that's our problem to solve, not yours." After Mordaxis left, Dae-young turned to Kyung. "Do you think he's right? Will we become like them?" "I hope not," Kyung said quietly. "But better we make our own mistakes than trust them to make decisions for us." The meeting changed nothing. The Council tried to organize military forces to restore order to a frontier world that had joined humanity's network. They assembled 12 battleships, representing 5 different species. It was the largest Council military operation in decades. General Subin met them with 3 dreadnoughts. The Battle of Arcturus Station lasted 17 minutes. The Council ships were old, their tactics older. They tried to form proper battle lines, coordinate fire, follow the doctrine they had used for centuries. The human ships moved like hunting sharks. They used their speed to stay at optimal range, their sensors to track every enemy vessel, their weapons to strike with terrible precision. It wasn't even a fair fight. When it ended, 8 Council ships were destroyed. 4 surrendered. None of the human ships had taken serious damage. Captain Dong Hyen, commanding one of the dreadnoughts, opened a channel to the surviving Council forces. "You fought bravely. That's worth respecting. But don't ever threaten our allies again. Next time we won't be so gentle." The Council ships retreated. The message spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Council military was obsolete. Humanity had surpassed them completely. In the days after Arcturus Station, something remarkable happened. Species that had stayed neutral, afraid to choose sides, began contacting humanity in waves. The trickle became a flood. Hyon worked around the clock processing the requests. Her team expanded to handle the volume. Protection agreements, trade deals, technology exchanges. Humanity shared defensive weapons, sensor systems, medical technology. Not the best stuff, but enough to make these species strong. Ambassador Hana gave another address to the galaxy. This time, billions watched. Humanity doesn't seek an empire, she said. We don't want subjects or servants. We want partners. The galaxy is big enough for all of us to thrive together. But that means actually working together, not one species controlling all the others. She paused, looking directly at the camera. The Council is welcome to continue existing. But it will exist as one power among many, not as the only power. The days of galactic monopolies are over. On Earth, President Jiwoo watched the broadcast with satisfaction. The plan was working better than they had hoped. Not because humans were conquering anyone, but because they were offering people a choice. How many species are with us now? President Jiwoo stood before the human assembly, looking out at representatives from Earth and all the colonies. The chamber was packed. Everyone knew this was a historic moment. The question before us today, she began, is what kind of power we want to become. We left the Council because they failed us. Now 300 species look to us for leadership. We must decide how to lead them. The debate had been raging for weeks. Some wanted humanity to remain focused on defense, protecting allies but staying neutral in other matters. Others argued for a more active role, helping these species develop economically and politically. Commander Dae Jung spoke from the military section. We have the power to reshape the galaxy. But power without purpose is just violence. We need clear principles. Ambassador Hana agreed. I propose we establish formal rules for our relationships with other species. Fair trade. Mutual defense. No exploitation. And most importantly, we help them become strong enough that they don't need us anymore. That last part caused discussion. Several representatives looked confused. Why would we make ourselves unnecessary? Asked a delegate from Mars Colony. Because that's the difference between an empire and a partnership, Hannah replied. Empires need dependent subjects. Partners want equals. The assembly voted. The result was close but clear. Humanity would pursue active engagement, but with strict ethical guidelines. They would share technology and provide protection, but they would demand fair treatment of citizens and transparent government from their allies. President Jiwoo signed the Mutual Defense Compact that evening. The document was simple, only 15 pages. It laid out clear rules. An attack on any member triggered immediate response from all members. No voting required. No committees. No delays. 300 species signed it in the first week. 50 more signed the following month. The galaxy was reorganizing itself, and the Council could only watch. Captain Dong Hyan commanded humanity's first contact teams. His job was meeting with new species interested in joining the compact. He traveled constantly, visiting worlds across the frontier. Today he was on Kelvor 3, meeting with their planetary council. The Kelvorians were a peaceful species, farmers mostly, who had paid tribute to the Galactic Council for 8 centuries. We hear humans offer protection without demanding payment, the Kelvorian elder said. She was old, her skin wrinkled like tree bark. This seems too good to be true. Dong Hyan understood her suspicion. We do expect something in return, honesty, fair treatment of your people. If you join the compact, you agree to basic standards of justice. No slavery. No genocide. No conquest of your neighbors. That's all? Another Kelvorian asked. That's all, Dong Hyan confirmed. Plus, you agree to help defend other compact members if they're attacked. We protect you, you protect others. It's mutual. The Kelvorians signed that day. They were species number 417, back at Council headquarters. High Chancellor Mordaxus faced rebellion in his own chambers. Delegates shouted at each other in dozens of languages. The Council was tearing itself apart. We must take military action, one delegate demanded. The humans are stealing our members. The humans aren't stealing anyone, another delegate replied. Our members are leaving because we failed them. We should negotiate, suggested a third voice. Offer the humans a partnership within the Council framework. They already rejected that, Mordaxus said tiredly. Multiple times. His chief military advisor, Kelvar, stepped forward. Excellence, we need to face reality. Our fleet is outdated. Our technology is old. If we fight the humans directly, we lose. Then what do you suggest? Mordaxus asked. Adaptation, Kelvar said. The humans are right about one thing. We've been complacent. We need to reform. Actually protect our members instead of just collecting fees? It was too late for that. But Mordaxus didn't want to admit it. The crisis came when the Corvaxian Empire announced they were leaving the Council. The Corvaxians were one of the founding members, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Their departure sent shockwaves through the Council. Even worse, they immediately signed the Mutual Defense Compact with humanity. Mordaxus tried to hold an emergency session, but dozens of delegates didn't even show up. They were too busy negotiating their own departures. Within 3 months, the Galactic Council lost over half its members. Some joined humanity's compact. Others declared independence. A few formed smaller regional alliances. The old order was dying. President Jiwoo watched the cascade with mixed feelings. This was what they wanted, but it was happening faster than expected. With great power came great responsibility, and humanity now had more power than any single species in galactic history. We need safeguards, she told her cabinet. Ways to prevent us from becoming what we fought against. Dr. Tejo had a suggestion. Transparency. We share everything with our compact members. Our technology, our military capabilities, our decision-making processes. No secrets. That's dangerous, Admiral Kyung objected. If our enemies know our capabilities, then we stay ahead, Tejo interrupted. By constantly innovating, the Council failed because they hoarded knowledge. We succeed by sharing it. Engineer Minji added another idea. We should also limit our own power. Maybe term limits for military commanders? Rotation of responsibilities? The cabinet debated for hours. Finally, they agreed on several reforms. Human military commanders would serve 5-year terms, then rotate to different positions. Old defensive technology would be shared with compact members within 2 years of development. And most importantly, any member could call for a vote to challenge human leadership if they felt humanity was acting unfairly. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start. The real test came when a compact member violated the rules. The Drexel Republic, a species that had joined early, was discovered running slave operations on its outer colonies. Intelligence Officer Hyan's network uncovered it. The evidence was clear and brutal. The Drexel government had been capturing refugees from nearby systems and forcing them to work in mines. Thousands of people suffering in terrible conditions. President Jiwoo faced a choice. Ignore it and lose credibility, or enforce the compact's rules and risk looking like the Council. She chose enforcement. General Subin led the operation personally. Human Marines landed on 3 Drexel mining colonies simultaneously. They freed the slaves, arrested the overseers, and documented everything. The Drexel government screamed about sovereignty and human interference. But when the evidence was presented to the Compact Assembly, the other members were horrified. The Drexel Republic was expelled from the Compact and faced economic sanctions from all members. Dachuwu addressed the galaxy that evening. The Mutual Defense Compact is not just about protection. It's about principles. Any member who violates those principles faces consequences. That includes humanity. If we ever fail to live up to our own standards, we expect our partners to hold us accountable. It was a risky message, but it resonated. Species across the galaxy saw that humanity enforced rules fairly, even on its own allies. Former Council Administrator Thexel watched these developments with interest. He had retired from the Council in disgust after New Bisan. Now he reached out to humanity with an offer. Ambassador Hana met with him on a neutral station. Thexul looked older than she remembered, worn down by centuries of service to a dying institution. I want to help you, he said simply. I know how the Council became what it is. I want to help you avoid the same mistakes. Why would you do that? Hannah asked. You served the Council for 300 years. Exactly, Thexul replied. I watched it decay from the inside. It started with good intentions, just like you're starting now. But slowly, bureaucracy replaced action. Self-interest replaced service. I don't want to see humanity follow that same path. Hannah brought him to Earth. President Jiwoo offered him a position as special advisor. His job was simple: be the voice of caution. Remind humanity of how easy it was to become corrupt. The Council's biggest mistake, Dexel told the Human Assembly in his first address, was believing it was irreplaceable. It started to think the galaxy needed the Council more than the Council needed to serve the galaxy. Don't make that error. Always remember you exist to serve, not to rule. His words were recorded and played at every military academy, every diplomatic school, every government office. A reminder of what not to become. Meanwhile, the old Galactic Council still existed, but as a shadow of its former self. Perhaps 200 species remained, mostly those too committed or too afraid to leave. Mordaxus still held his title, but his authority meant little. One day he sent a message to President Jiwoo. Not an official communication, just a personal note. "You were right," he wrote. "The Council became everything it was designed to prevent. We stopped serving and started controlling. I hope you do better. But I fear power corrupts everyone eventually. Stay vigilant." Who kept that message? She had it framed and hung it in her office. A reminder that good intentions weren't enough. They needed constant effort, constant vigilance, constant willingness to question themselves. The compact continued to grow. 500 members. 600. 700. Species from all corners of the galaxy, united not by fear or dependency, but by mutual interest and shared values. It wasn't perfect. There were disputes and problems. 5 years after the severance, historian Young Suk walked through the memorial gardens on New Bizon. The planet had been rebuilt, but the scars remained. Not physical scars anymore. The cities were new and clean. But everyone who lived here remembered what happened. The memorial stood at the center of the main city. A great wall of black stone, carved with 4,219,847 names. Every person who died that day. Young Suk was here to record the ceremony that happened every year on this date. Commander Dae-young, now retired, laid a wreath at the base of the memorial. His hair had gone gray, and he walked with a slight limp from an old injury. But his eyes were still sharp. "We gather here to remember," he said to the assembled crowd. Thousands of people stood in respectful silence. Many were survivors who had been off-world when the attack happened. "We remember not just the dead, but why they died. Because the galaxy's most powerful institution chose procedures over people. Chose bureaucracy over lives." Young Suk recorded every word. Her job was to preserve the truth of what happened, so future generations would understand why humanity made the choices it did. After the ceremony, she interviewed survivors. An old woman named Haewon, who lost her entire family. A young man named Gil, who was on a cargo ship when the attack happened and came home to find everyone he loved gone. Their stories were painful, but important. "Do you hate the Council?" Young Suk asked HAE-1. The old woman thought for a long time. "I did," she finally said. "For years I burned with hate. But now I just feel sad. Sad that so many people died for nothing. Sad that it took such tragedy to make humanity realize we had to change." Ambassador Wu Jin stood in the assembly chamber of the Mutual Defense Compact. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from over 800 member species. It hummed with conversation in hundreds of languages. Today, they were voting on the charter for permanent peacekeeping forces. Forces that would respond to threats quickly, without waiting for approvals or committee meetings. Forces modeled on what humanity had built after New Bizon. "The proposal is simple," Wu Jin explained to the assembly. "Joint rapid response fleets, with ships from at least 5 different species in each fleet. No single species controls them. Decisions made by fleet commanders in the field, not by politicians light years away." Some delegates worried about giving military commanders so much power. Others worried about the cost. But most remembered the lessons of the past. The vote passed with 83% approval. Wu Jin felt relief. This was another step toward making the compact truly mutual. Humans would contribute ships and expertise, but they wouldn't control everything. That was crucial on Earth. President Jiwoo prepared to leave office. Her term was ending, and humanity's constitution limited presidents to one 5-year term. She had argued for that limit herself, understanding that power needed to rotate. Her successor would be chosen in elections next month. The candidates debated vigorously about humanity's role in the galaxy. Some wanted to pull back, focus more on human interests. Others wanted even deeper engagement with alien species. It was healthy debate. Democracy working as intended. Jiwoo spent her last weeks in office reviewing what had been accomplished. The Mutual Defense Compact was stable and growing. The old Galactic Council still existed, but with only about 100 members now and no real power. 3 new regional councils had formed, all operating on more democratic principles. Trade flourished across the galaxy. Technology advanced rapidly because knowledge was being shared instead of hoarded. Wars had decreased because the Compact's rapid response teams stopped conflicts before they escalated. It wasn't paradise. Problems remained. But things were better than they had been under council rule. Dr. Taeho visited her office one last time before she left. The scientist looked tired but satisfied. His quantum research had opened doors humanity never imagined. Now dozens of species were contributing to the research, advancing the science even further. "We've developed something new," he told Jiwoo. "A quantum communication network that works across any distance instantly. No light-speed delay." Jiwoo understood the implications immediately. That changes everything. Real-time coordination across the entire galaxy. "We're sharing it with all Compact members," Taeho said. "Some of my advisors argued we should keep it secret, maintain our advantage. But that's council thinking. We succeed by lifting everyone up, not by keeping secrets." Engineer Minji continued building new ships, but the designs had changed. Now they incorporated ideas from dozens of different species. Corvexian shield technology, Valorian power systems, Drelax weapons targeting, human quantum drives. The new ships were better than anything humanity could have built alone. They proved that cooperation produced better results than isolation. General Suben, still commanding the Rapid Response Legions, found herself working with alien officers more than human ones. Her second in command was a Corvaxian. Her chief engineer was Valorian. Her tactical advisor was from a species humanity had never even heard of 6 years ago. They worked together seamlessly. Trust built through shared purpose. "You know what's strange?" her Corvaxian second said one day. 5 years ago, we barely knew humans existed. Now I trust you with my life." Subin smiled. "That's what happens when people actually work together instead of playing political games." Former council administrator Thexul became an important voice in the new galaxy. His warnings about the corrupting nature of power were widely respected. He traveled constantly, speaking to assemblies and academies, teaching the lessons he learned from the council's failure. "Every empire believes it's different," he told students at Earth's diplomatic academy. "Every power structure thinks it won't fall into the same traps." The council thought that, "For thousands of years, we believed we were necessary and therefore justified in anything we did." A student raised her hand. "But isn't the compact becoming the same thing? Hundreds of species following human leadership?" "Good question," Thexul replied. "The difference is that humanity actively works to make itself less necessary. They share power, share technology, share decision-making. That's the opposite of what the council did. But you're right to be vigilant. The moment humanity stops working to empower others, the moment they start believing they're irreplaceable, that's when the rot begins." The Galactic Council, what remained of it, finally acknowledged reality. High Chancellor Mordaxus stepped down. The remaining member species voted to restructure completely. Adopting many of the principles that made the compact successful, they sent a formal message to humanity, not asking to rejoin or merge, just acknowledging that they had failed and humanity had shown a better way. Ambassador Hana received the message personally. She felt no triumph, only sadness for all the time wasted. All the suffering that could have been prevented. She sent back a simple reply. We hope you succeed in building something better. The galaxy is big enough for multiple approaches to cooperation. We're not enemies, just different systems trying to serve our people. It was diplomatic and genuine. Humanity had no interest in destroying the Council. They just refused to be controlled by it. Captain Dong Hyan, older now but still traveling, visited a world called Paxil 7 5 years ago. This world had been dying, poor, exploited, hopeless. The Council had taken their resources and given nothing back. Now Paxil 7 thrived. They had built new cities, developed new industries, created art and culture. They were protected by the Compact but governed themselves. They traded freely but weren't exploited. What changed? Dong Hyan asked the local leader. Hope, she replied simply. We always had resources and talented people. But we had no hope. The Council convinced us we needed them to survive. When humanity showed us we could stand on our own with just some help and fair treatment, everything changed. That conversation stayed with Dong Hyan. Hope was more powerful than weapons or technology. Giving people hope, showing them they could control their own destiny. That was humanity's real contribution. Back on Earth, the new president was inaugurated. President Quan was younger than Jiwoo, only 42. She promised to continue the principles of fair partnership while adapting to new challenges. We will never forget New Bisan, she said in her inaugural address. Those 4.2 million deaths taught us the cost of trusting broken systems. But we also won't let grief turn us into the thing we fought against. We must stay humble, stay vigilant, and always remember we exist to serve, not to rule. The ceremony was broadcast across the Compact. Hundreds of species watched, seeing the peaceful transfer of power. It impressed many of them. Power changing hands without violence or corruption was rare in the galaxy. Historian Young Suk finished her comprehensive history of the Severance era. The book was thousands of pages, filled with interviews, documents, and analysis. She titled it simply, The Breaking Point and What Came After. The final chapter addressed the question everyone asked, was it worth it? 4 million people died on New Bisan, she wrote. That tragedy can never be justified or forgotten. But from that grief came change. The galaxy reorganized itself along more just principles. Hundreds of species gained freedom from exploitation. Wars decreased. Cooperation increased. We cannot say the deaths were worth it because no deaths should be necessary.